Welcome, everyone. So excited to have all of you here today. So, all of you had applied and are part of the recruitment bootcamp cohort for the mental health staff edition. So, we're going to have 4 sessions in the next coming weeks, and this is the first session. So, really, what we're going to be doing today is just really building that foundation. We're going to get to know each other, things like that. So, we're going to do an introduction, recruitment and retention overview, and then the type of mental health providers. And actually, as I was making this PowerPoint, I moved it around a little bit. So I think we'll probably talk about type of mental health providers and then do the recruitment and retention overview. There's also going to be a few Mentimeters. So if you've never used Mentimeter, we will definitely walk you through that just to kind of get to know everyone a little bit better. So there we go. I was having trouble clicking forward. So the session is being recorded. All of the recordings and the slides are going to be available to everyone who is accepted into the cohort. One of our last slides that we have talks about the discussion board, but all of you should have access to the discussion board. I know Mariah Blake sent out some emails earlier today, and really you can just go on there, get all the materials you need, but also talk to each other, share questions. During these live sessions, we really just want you to be present. If you can be on camera, that's great, but definitely not a requirement. I want to make sure everyone's just comfortable with what you prefer. Really, as I said, I want to make this interactive, really engaging, not just learning from me, but also learning from your peers. So feel free at any point to use the chat box. I believe you can unmute yourself. Just jump in if you have any questions. I will try to always leave room for Q&A, but I know sometimes like a question just pops in and it's much easier to go ahead and talk about it then. And then if you're having technical difficulties, please go ahead and message Mariah Blake. All of you should also have her email through the correspondence that she's been sending. And then we are going to have an evaluation at the end of the session, but I do want to let all of you know. So we're going to have a pre-assessment. So how you currently are doing when it comes to the recruitment of your mental health providers. So in a moment, Mariah will put that link in the chat and I'll give you a few minutes to fill that out. And then we're going to do a post-assessment in the last session as based on the materials that you've gone through, how are you currently standing and feeling about everything. But there's also going to be separate evaluations for each session at the end. And this just helps us know what you need, what changes we may need to make. And this is also part of our reporting back to HRSA. So I think, yep. So Mariah put the pre-assessment in the chat. So if everyone could just click on that link, I'm going to give everyone about 2 minutes. It's very, very short. So if you could just fill it out, if you don't have the chance to finish it or aren't able to do it now for some reason, we will also send out the link and we'll make sure to post it on the discussion board. But I'm going to go quiet for about 2 minutes. If everyone could fill this out, that would be great. So anybody who might have just joined us, we're having everybody fill out a pre-assessment. The link is in the chat. And if you could please go ahead and fill that out, that would be wonderful. We're just going to give it about just a few more seconds. Okay, so I think we're at the 2-minute mark. If anyone's like, "Oh no, please give us more time," just let me know. I'm happy to do that. But if not, we will go ahead and move forward. So it's always good to just have some guidelines. We do this across the board with all of our webinars or different learning collaboratives of just, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself because I know there's always background noise. I had mentioned this in the other slide, be as present as possible, listen deliberately, share generously, think outside the box. This is for all of you. So we really want to make this something where you're getting out of it what you need. We always say, be gracious to one another. If you are having any tech issues, as I had mentioned, let us know right away. And hopefully, you'll be enjoying your time with your colleagues while you are here. So just a few intro slides on who we are. So all of you are here today through us, which is the Association of Clinicians for the Underserved. So we were started 25 years ago by National Health Service Corps alumni. That's very much still at the foundation of what we do. But as you can see here, it's all about that access to care and that clinician support. We have a lot of different types of programming, everything from suicide, safer care to vision services, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion programming. But what brings us here today is the STAR Center. So that's the specific program which I work under, Mariah as well. And we're going to have a slide in a moment where you can see the whole STAR Center team. But really for this slide, what I wanted to point out is all of the resources that we're going to be presenting throughout this learning collaborative, the different assignments that you will be doing. All of those are free on our website for any of you to use at any time. So our resources, our training and technical assistance, all of that is offered for free for health centers. Also, the chcworkforce.org, that's a website specific to the STAR Center, and that's where you will have access to the discussion board. You will also have our direct emails, but you can use this general info@chcworkforce.org if you would like, and that email actually goes directly to me, so I will be able to respond. And then, oh, thank you, Alex. I see that Alex hopped on. Okay. Having trouble forwarding the slides. Sorry, everyone. So this is the really awesome STAR Center team. So as you look through, I will be the main faculty in many of the sessions, but we're also going to have Alex Rolwin, who is on today's call, and Helen Ravenier. Both of them will also be faculty. And Mariah Blake is doing all of the tech support, managing everything in the background related to this learning collaborative. You have our direct emails on here, so please feel free to contact us at any point. I see Mariah is doing a little wave. So what are the goals for the recruitment boot camp? A lot of this, in a way I've already mentioned, but really we want you to learn from these materials we're presenting. We want you to talk about your challenges and strengths, because obviously everyone's here because of the challenges that they're facing with the recruitment of mental health providers. There's also a lot of strengths that your health center has, and probably a lot of different things that you've used that other people in the cohort may not have thought about. So please, please, please share. We want you to arrive with questions, really be part of the discussion. Throughout the different assignments, I'm going to make sure at the beginning of each session to leave a little bit of time to go over those assignments so you can bring your questions at that point. It's really about, as it says here, we want you to build those relationships, those processes, and that strategy. And then ultimately, we want you to work on creating a recruitment plan or a comprehensive workforce plan for your mental health providers, something that you can implement when you go back to your health centers. We're going to be doing this in many different ways. So you're here in one of the first steps, which are the live webinars. We're going to have breakout groups and dedicated time for discussions. We'll have assignments, tools, and resources. All of the resources, by the way, that you will see on the slides, all of those are hyperlinked in the presentation. So you can just click on that and go directly to the resource. You're going to have access to the discussion board. If you need one-on-one technical assistance, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Also, as part of the Learning Collaborative, which is part of what all of you sign when agreeing to join the Learning Collaborative, we do a 3 to 6 month follow-up. So that's basically at the 3 to 6 month mark after the end of this Learning Collaborative, we're going to reach out to all of you to see how everything is going, to see if you've been able to implement some of these tools and resources that we will be showing you. So please be on the lookout for that, because we'll send an email and like a short survey, as well as setting up time to do one-on-one check-ins if you would like. So these are just the overall learning objectives of the recruitment boot camp. Really, it's around looking at those specific needs and special considerations for recruiting and retaining mental health providers. I know we call it recruitment boot camp, but I also wanted to bring in aspects of retention because both of them work together. What is that invaluable role that mental health providers play as part of the primary care team and in your health center? And then how do you create that comprehensive workforce plan for the recruitment of mental health providers? And that is based on our outcomes, or that will be our outcomes of where you're going to be developing that personalized plan and then implementing it. And all of the assignments that we will give most likely are going to be like different tables and charts. All of that is what you're putting together to create that comprehensive workforce plan. So you won't be doing it on your own. I did want to just put this slide in here to give everyone a better idea of what it fully means to have a comprehensive workforce plan. I know we're focused specifically on mental health providers for this learning collaborative, but so much of this could really go across the board in the recruitment and retention of anybody in your health center. So as you work on these assignments, as you work on these different topics, that's why it's so important to write all this down and keep it in one place. So as you can see here, a comprehensive workforce plan really is comprehensive. So, what is your vision of your workforce? How are you assessing everything, your retention strategies, your recruitment strategies, your development strategies, action plans? But because we have a limited time in this learning collaborative, we're really going to focus on that middle part of recruitment and then adding on the retention piece. Okay, so we're going to do a few icebreakers and a few other questions. I don't know if any of you or some of you have used Mentimeter before. We love it here. We use it all the time. So there's many ways that you can get to this. And in a moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint. I'm going to move over to the Mentimeter slide. But basically, you can go to menti.com, you can put in this code. We have a QR code, so you can easily just put your phone up to that. I believe Mariah will be putting the link. Yep. So you can also go directly to the link that Mariah is sending. I'm just going to give it a quick second so everyone can click on what they need. And then I'll stop sharing and move over to Mentimeter. We're going to have 4 questions we're going to go through, and the first 2 are more just like fun icebreakers. Okay, so let me go ahead and stop sharing. And then now share again my other screen. Okay, so, oh, I love the movie It. So because it is the fall, we are in October, I wanted to ask, what is your favorite scary movie? And I think this says a lot about people too. So, go to menti.com and respond. And that's totally fine if you don't like scary movies. I actually had put in another question, and then I watched the movie Scream last night, and I was like, oh, I gotta ask about scary movies. So It, amazing. Evil Dead, amazing. The Shining, amazing. The Pope's Exorcist, I haven't seen that one. I need to watch that. I'm obsessed with horror movies. I watched, and I just said this in a previous meeting, A Nightmare on Elm Street when I'm really stressed out as a way to go to sleep, because Freddy Krueger is hilarious. So what I can tell is most people here probably don't like scary movies. So we can move on to the next. Saw, also really good. What Lies Beneath, same. All right, thank you, everyone. Just a little bit of a fall vibe. Oh, Jaws, yes. They don't have this ride anymore, but at Universal Studios in Orlando, they used to have a Jaws ride. I was terrified of it. All right, so let's move on to the next one. So this is actually a quiz. I've never done this before, so I'm going to try it. And then it says to press enter and we'll get started. So because, oh no, did I just totally mess this up? Okay, there we go. All of you should see it in a moment. So go ahead and select who is the mother of social work. And I chose this question because we're going to be talking about mental health. Social workers are the largest mental health providers in the country. So which one is it? And then how do I get the results? Oh, there we go. Okay. So I see 5 for Florence Nightingale, 2 for Henrietta Lacks. It's actually Jane Addams. So I chose all of these 3 women. Florence Nightingale, very much obviously the mother of nursing. Henrietta Lacks, oftentimes referred to as the mother of modern medicine. A really amazing story, and there is an excellent book called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Her cancer cells have been used throughout modern medicine for so many things, but when you look at the equity, oftentimes they weren't really used with her permission. So it's just a really great, powerful story. And then Jane Addams, she started Hull House, I believe, in Chicago and really started the field of social work. And I had asked Mariah after the quiz if she could just put a few links. Oh, perfect, Mariah, you're on it. A few links that will just give all of you more information about these amazing women in history. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on. And for the 2 of you that knew Jane Addams, congrats, you win. And I don't think it tells me who it is, but you totally win. So, oh, okay, perfect. So is Melissa and then a croc. I don't know who that is, but both of you got it. Both of you win first place. Okay, so we just have 2 more of these. And these next 2 slides are really helpful for me to just know better what you're looking for. So I know we asked this in the application, but so many things can change that we really just want to know, what are you hoping to learn and gain from this learning collaborative? And I'm going to ask one more after this that'll help you hone in on the topic. So how to recruit the right candidate for remote positions. That's really great, because one of the things that we hear all the time, especially mental health providers, is most of them only want remote positions. So that's great that you're offering this. Rural health centers, absolutely. We constantly hear about the difficulty in recruiting people, how to recruit, okay, licensed clinical social workers from other states. That's great, because that can be a bit complicated, especially along licensing, how to recruit mental health providers. Oh, and sorry, this is blocking what outside the norm. So the person who wrote outside the norm, and these are all anonymous, so if you're not comfortable being called out, that's fine. But I wonder what you mean more by outside the norm. Feel free to unmute yourself, put something in the chat, or you can just contact me directly. But I would love to know more about that. So how to best recruit and retain in rural. Yep. New tools, effective recruitment strategies, deeper knowledge of the mental health field. We're going to go into that a little bit today. Okay, yep, where to post, rural, and both rural and city locations. Perfect. So yeah, I don't know if the person who said about the norm posted, I don't see anything in the chat. Let me just give them a moment before I go to the next one if they want to say anything out loud. And if not, like I said, if you could just reach out to me individually, I'm just really curious what you mean by that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move to this last slide. So what this slide is asking, each of these areas are the different topics that we're going to look at throughout the 4 sessions. And we really are going to look at them really through an equal lens of equal amount of time. That was what my perspective was. But I would really love to know, are there any that really are those pressing issues? Because then that'll allow me, as we're creating the rest of the slides and the rest of the presentations, to focus in on certain things. If there's something that people are like, yeah, we really just want to spend more time on this topic. So I'll give everyone a moment just to respond to that. Marketing and promotion, compensation, benefits. And those usually tend to be the top ones. Oh, okay. Thank you, Tracy. I just saw that in the chat. Okay, so marketing, promotion, compensation, benefits, preparing the recruitment team, onboarding, mission, and culture. Okay, excellent. And actually, this very much in line with how I was thinking of splitting up the time that we are going to be looking at each of these. And time again, we hear the marketing and promotion and the compensation and benefits to be a huge one, as well as pathway and career development. But, you know, all of them are really critical. And like I said, this is really looking at those special considerations for how you can attract and keep mission-driven mental health providers. So thank you so much, everyone. I can also post these results on the dashboard, so I'll make sure to send that over to Mariah. So let me stop sharing again, and feel free to keep responding. And going back to our slide deck. Okay, so I wanted also to give all of you some time to get to know each other a little bit better. And because we do have a bigger cohort this time around, I thought the best way to do it really would be to go into breakout rooms. So in a moment, Mariah's going to send each of you into a breakout room. We're probably going to have, I see we have 20 people on, so we'll probably do 4 rooms of 5 people each. If you could just introduce yourself to your colleagues, let them know what your role and your job is. And then you don't have to answer both of these questions, but I really want you to think about it and at least talk and share about one of them. Oh, and I see there's something in the chat. And then let me just, Tracy said, our clinic had to restructure mental health provider wage, PTO, accrual, and CO allowance to align closer to other providers, such as medical and dental. They didn't feel valued. Yes. So I know I'm kind of like skipping around, but anytime I see anything in the chat, I like to read it out loud. Tracy, that is so critically important. And that is one of the biggest reasons why mental health providers leave or don't go work in settings where they don't feel valued, and the value that they bring is equal to medical and dental. So it is very important that those salaries and those benefits are equitable across the board. So thank you so much for putting that on there. And I think actually what you put will help you respond to one of these questions. So what I was hoping to do, have all of you go for about 10 minutes and then select someone who's going to report back from the different groups. And I just want to know, like, what is one strategy that has either really worked for you, that is great, or one that you have tried that you either has been challenging or unsuccessful? Because I think all of us have tried many different things, and some things work better than others. You know, please, if you're someone who is really like extroverted and all about talking, like, feel free to take the lead, but then also take a step back. And if you're a little bit more introverted, please take the time to also step up and engage with your colleagues. So what I will do now, oh, and Genevieve says we are challenged to get, so sorry, one second, to get a provider talent pool that isn't full of personality disorders. Okay, that's a hard one, and I can actually speak more to this once everybody gets back from the breakout rooms. I'm going to go back to this comment, and then we'll chat more about it. Okay, I think we have, okay, there we go. I knew there was going to be a moment where everybody came in right at the same time. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. I hope all of you had a good chat with each other, got to know each other a little bit better. So we're just going to have a few people report out. So who from one of the groups is supposed to be the report out person that would like to share? And you could focus on both questions or either of the questions. Also happy to call on people. I always tell people this in my trainings. I'm a social worker, so I am really comfortable with silence to the point that it's awkward, and then somebody will talk. So
well, we can start.
Okay, thank you.
I think we were grouped 3, but I'm not 100% sure. I had Genevieve, Lori, and where did she go? I don't see her on here now.
Oh no, so maybe there were some tech issues.
She was having tech issues,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah,
There's Tracy, right in
it
the
was
middle.
Tracy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so we were a mixture of urban and rural health centers, and two from Maine, one from Michigan, and I can't remember where the other one was from. Terrible. Sorry, Genevieve. And we all seem to have similar problems regardless of where we're located.
Yes.
The successful things were one of the successful things that Tracy shared actually is that she's reached out to Psychology Today, or has gone into Psychology Today,
Okay.
has found folks by looking at other agencies and what they have there, and has actually reached out to some of those candidates and has had some success with that. So that was kind of cool and something we'd never tried.
That's actually the first time I've ever heard that. That
Yeah,
is such a good idea.
it was a great idea, and that it worked. Yay, good for you. She is in an urban area, however, and so we kind of joked about, we only have here in our part of the world, Dunkin' Donuts and Walmart. She's got everything in the city, so that's part of one of the challenges, right? And some of the stuff that we talked about that didn't really work out so well. The thing that I shared was we are a National Health Service Corps site.
Oh, yeah.
We use that as a tool because I don't have many carrots to dangle out here. And our most recent LCSW, who's going into her second year, was declined by National Health Service Corps.
Yes.
And so very disappointing. And to go to that value piece, right?
Yes.
Even the federal government didn't value me here.
Yes. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
The only one that we have that can provide therapy at this point. So it's challenging. And Lori, I can't remember what it was that you shared that you said wasn't working.
So I mostly shared what the one thing that did work for us, which was we take on students.
Oh, yeah.
And so while they're a student, they're become integrated into our team. And especially new providers I think they feel really supported by the other team members. And so they feel like, they have more support and have someone to go to whenever they have a question or, anything like that.
Right. Right. Perfect. Thank you for that. First of all, some great ideas. It's so fundamentally important to ensure your team feels supported. Really sad to hear that about the National Health Service Corps because it is such a huge get for people. One of the other things that we often hear, especially when it comes to social workers, so the scholarship, they wouldn't be able to take it while they're in school. It's only after they become clinically licensed.
Right.
And it takes a very long time to get to that, and a lot of money. Most social workers, when they're doing supervision, will pay about $100 a week for about 2 years for someone to supervise them. So one of the things that I say to health centers is, if this is an incentive you can offer within your health center, it can be an excellent recruitment tool, because again, you wouldn't be able to do the loan forgiveness until you become clinically licensed. But for many people by that time, they look at how much they can make in independent practice versus the health center. So thank you for bringing that up. If one person could share, because then I'm going to go back into our presentation, but I wanted to see if anybody else would like to share just one other success or challenge.
I can go. In our group, we had Amy, and she had her psych NP in there with her, Ricky and Karina. I hope I said it right. I discussed some things that I don't know. I wouldn't say they worked, but maybe they gave us a little extra bump. We partnered with some of our schools that have social work programs or LPC programs, and we asked them to post our jobs on their job board. I was telling them for our rural sites, we literally went through the social work board website, got people's address, and sent them like, we're hiring cards. Karina said she's reached out through people on LinkedIn. I don't kind of remember what else, if y'all want to jump in and say something else that we talked about, but those are some of the things that we discussed. And we also discussed the difficulties in getting people to stay, like the compensation and stuff. And Karina said she respectfully asked people, where are you going? How much are they paying? So
Yeah.
she gets that
Yeah.
information and can go from there.
That's an incredibly valuable piece of information to have that, because we know the compensation is a huge part of it. So we're going to spend in one of the sessions a lot of time talking about this, and I always get so many questions. So now I've learned I'm going to leave enough time to talk about compensation. So thank you so much for everybody for sharing all of that. And of course, if you have any other like things that have really worked for you that you find to be very helpful, put that in the discussion boards, because again, I think this is a great idea to like help your other cohort members. I also really like the idea of going to the providers. So we'll especially talk about this in the job announcements, the marketing, the promotion, but really it has shifted where you're looking for people. You know, you don't expect them to come looking for you. It's that like we need to seek out the providers that we want to bring into the health center. So before I pull up the presentation again and keep going, we're going to talk about different types of mental health providers and then some very general recruitment and retention. But I did want to address the comment of we're challenged to get a provider talent pool that isn't full of personality disorders. So I want to call in a little bit with this comment. So when we're looking at mental health providers, oftentimes people, not often, but many times, people who are drawn to these professions, there's a lot of lived experience. And it's not different from a medical provider or dental provider or really anybody choosing their career. I think we just naturally choose what we want to do, oftentimes related to our lived experiences around that. And the reason that I wanted to call in with this comment is because oftentimes when we talk about personality disorders, there is a very strong stigma and negative connotation associated with that. So the language that we use, especially when working with mental health providers, is critically important because it will very much tell that individual whether or not you feel valued in the organization. Also, personality disorders are ADA protected. So these are mental health disorders that are protected under, oh my God, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if someone needs reasonable accommodations for that, those really have to be provided for the individual in that sense. But I also would not dismiss or discredit the immense value that someone brings when they have these type of diagnoses. Now, I know sometimes we use personality disorder much more broadly, not within the scope of the actual diagnosis, but some of your best providers may have their own diagnoses that they are working with. So I rarely disclose this or public in a setting, but I myself, I went into social work before I knew my diagnoses. I'm actually diagnosed with both PTSD and bipolar. And I have to tell you, it has made me, my empathy and my ability to connect when I was doing clinical work so much stronger than I think it would have done otherwise. I also strongly encourage anyone working in healthcare to just go to therapy, you know, because this stuff is hard. So there's a lot of triggers. And sometimes where we think it may be a personality disorder, it may be other things, it's really people dealing with burnout. It's people dealing with the struggle of what they're seeing day in and day out in an organization that is not supporting them. And the reason that that stuff is so important is because that's what we're going to be talking about in this learning collaborative, because building those places that people want to work and feel valued, it creates such a loyalty and a difference for someone to be like, okay, I know that I'm in a place that values what I do and the expertise that I bring. And then Alex, I didn't know if you wanted to add in, I totally just called you out, but if you wanted to add anything else.
Yeah, and I would say, so my background, a lot of it is in kind of organizational conflict management and how do you help teams kind of come together and work together better. And I certainly understand the challenge of people, either, you know, someone who has a diagnosis that can cause kind of social conflicts, or just staff that aren't getting along real well. And sometimes it's like, there's the troublemaker over there, right? And we identify a person who's doing that, and that all happens. And there's there's times when you do have to have the conversation with someone if maybe this field or this job is not right for them, but there's other times when you can work with the staff and the team and try to figure out, you know, are there external stressors that are causing some issues. And so you know, there's too much to talk about just today with all of that. But please do reach out to any of us here. I'm more than happy to set up like a TA session if someone wants some advice on how to kind of do some of that conflict management and kind of work with team dynamics around their staff and everything like that. Absolutely happy to talk that through in more detail.
And one of the last things, thank you for that. Thank you, Alex. One of the last things I just wanted to say is, you know, you also as an individual, whether you have a diagnosis or maybe you're just a difficult person to work with, you have to know yourself as a professional. And some people really are not right for the position, but especially people who have lived experience with any mental health disorder and stuff, I can tell you the amount of strength that it takes to just like literally get up every day and then do work like this is an incredibly difficult thing. So when we look at language and we want to keep our mental health providers, it's really, really important to understand like what does that terminology really mean when we use it. So again, I just wanted to offer some of that background and experience. And Danielle, thank you so much. Yes, I rarely share, but I did want to say, you know, when I'm in the workplace, not that that magically leaves, I still have my anxiety and all of those things, but I've worked really, really, really hard to, you know, build a level of professionalism and to be seen as a professional beyond just my diagnosis. So thank you, everyone. A little side note on that. And then I see Tracy put in a great resource in the chat. So thank you so much for that. And Alex put his email. So let's go back over to the presentation. So the next one really, or the next few really are going to be a lot more didactic. It's just, again, I want to build that foundation. So at any point, jump in, put any comments, like really, I thank all of you for the comments you're putting on there because I think it creates such amazing, amazing discussions around that. Okay, so when we're looking at type of mental health providers, it's really important to also understand this because you want to understand who are we actually recruiting? You know, who are we looking for and what role do they play? And especially with mental health, it's a little bit, there's just so many different types of mental health providers, types of training that understanding those backgrounds can be really, really helpful when you're putting together job announcements, when there's open positions and you're trying to find the right person. So this is more of just a general overview of, as a patient coming into a health center, the different types of services you may receive. And all of you being in health centers, working in health centers, you know all of this. So when we're looking at the mental health department specifically, oftentimes we're really looking at it at 3 layers. Doesn't mean that every health center has this, but really looking at it from those 3 perspectives of enabling services, those who are doing assessment and psychotherapy, and medication management. It's also important to keep in mind that not everybody in mental health is necessarily clinical. Not everybody wants to be like a therapist or a counselor, but they really still are within the mental health world, especially when it comes to enabling services and the really important role that they play. The other important part of why understanding these different roles is so crucial is because, as I said, that language that you're using when you're trying to recruit someone can make a really huge difference. And you'll probably hear me say this again when we do the job announcements. But for example, anytime I see a job announcement for a mental health provider where it says that you should, you know, offer or be sympathetic to your patients or the clients you work with, I immediately, my first thought is, this place does not know mental health, because the word is empathy. It's not sympathy. Sympathy is very much like, oh, I feel really bad for you. Sorry, that sucks. Empathy is really what you're using in that therapeutic setting. So it's something so small and can seem so insignificant, but it can make such a huge difference when people are looking at a place to go and work. So enabling services. First, we're looking at those peer support specialists. So when we were talking about that lived experience piece. Oftentimes, these are individuals who have had various lived experiences within the behavioral health realm. So in substance use disorder, a lot of times you have peer support specialists, they do get special certifications, they may be licensed, and creating that connection with the patients who are really struggling with this. And again, when you have a lived experience, you should never make it about you. And I'm not going to go into the whole therapy like line, but also understanding that someone understands and is empathetic to your experience can have a very powerful impact on the patient. So when you're hiring for these type of roles, knowing what you're looking for and the language you're going to use for them is really important. We put social workers here because oftentimes social workers are really only hired at master's level or once they're clinical. So in order to be clinical, you do have to have a master's. But there's a lot of bachelor level social workers who, for example, are great community health workers who do case management all within that behavioral health field, and they have that knowledge and understanding and can be incredibly valuable. And if they come in at that role in your health center, this is someone who you can identify as potentially supporting them if they want to go do their master's in social work. There are many part-time online programs they can do, and essentially keep them there, like growing your own in the health center. We'll talk about pathways and all of that as well. And then we have community health workers and promotores or promotoras. You know, those people, again, they play crucial roles, and it's not just the physical health part. Like our brain is not completely separated from our body. So when we're looking at the enabling services piece, it's really important to understand the crucial role that your behavioral health providers or people in the behavioral health department or mental health department play when it comes to this. So then this will probably be within the space of how we view the mental health department most often, the assessment and the psychotherapy, especially in health centers. And we know the demand right now for people to receive mental health services is so huge. So understanding the different roles is very important. And this is not a fully exhaustive list either, but you have psychologists, so they do require that they have a doctorate in order to practice as a psychologist. And obviously their clinical license, because there are people that do a PhD in psychology and do not do clinical focus or clinical licensing. You have the clinical social workers. I talked a lot about that earlier in today's session. I am really familiar with this, again, just having gone through that. So if anybody has any specific questions about social workers, I'm more than happy to answer that. So you do need a master's to be clinically licensed. Usually it takes about 2 years of just training to get to that point. And again, we have to think about how are we incentivizing and supporting our mental health providers once they've reached that clinical license in order to keep them. There's also counselors. So the same way, usually it's a master's in education and counseling. You have marriage and family therapists. Their licensing, usually it's like licensed personal counselor. Art therapists are within that scope as well. So there's a really large scope of people. What is important is knowing that all of these individuals have not studied the same thing or necessarily been trained the same way. So when you're hiring any type of therapist or counselor, make sure that you understand, like, what is the population they were trained to work with, the population that they do want to specifically work with. What type of modalities does your health center use? So if your health center is really focused, for example, on cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a lot of people that are not necessarily trained as in-depth in that, and it wouldn't work as well to bring them into your health center. So again, understanding those little nuances is really critical. You have psychiatric nurse practitioners and psychiatrists as well. I do want to also move them into the next slide that we have, because those are the two. Not only would they be able to provide therapeutic services, but also do medication management, which is critically important oftentimes, especially when you have more severe mental health diagnoses. Very important to have that connection between the medication management and the therapy. So as you can see here, you may have someone that maybe is working with a counselor, but also psychiatrist. So all of them understanding how to work together and work within that team-based care is critically important, and another important part of having a strong retention in your health center. And then of course, primary care physicians. And as we know, more and more primary care physicians are doing medication management in relation to mental health, and also doing, for example, like depression screenings, things like that. So this type of information across the board with your health center is critical. And the comment that was put in the chat on ensuring that equity of compensation across the different type of providers, you can see here why that's so important, because it really is a team-based approach. And to have a strong team-based approach, you have to have a really strong organizational culture that says, we see you as mental health providers, and we understand that you are as equally as important as anybody else in our health center. There was one health center that I was in a training in Colorado, and this, I don't remember what state they were from, but their PCA was talking to me and said they used to have like a luncheon for all of their clinical providers. And for some reason, halfway through the year, they decided to stop inviting their mental health providers. And surprisingly, a lot of them left. And that's, you really want to ensure, again, that you understand people's roles and that you are inclusive in them being part of the health center and the just critical importance of what they bring. Also, if we look at the history of mental health, there has been so much stigma associated with it. So being in a place that doesn't really promote or enhance or continue that stigma is another great way to retain and recruit mental health providers, because we're trained around this, and we can see it's like, okay, this place really does value this, or there's not really the value that I'm looking for, so maybe it's time for me to go somewhere else. So before I go on, I know that that was pretty quick, and we have, well, I'm in the East Coast, so we have till 3:15, and I was going to go through all the recruitment and retention, but I just want to make sure that nobody has any questions regarding all of this. But this is really, like I said, you were just looking at the role of the enabling services, the role of the therapy and assessment, and the role of the medication management, how the different providers fit into those different spaces. But I also don't want us to forget so many other people that are involved in the mental health department. So the people who are working in administration, HR, all of you play a critical role in working together with your providers to ensure that the patients are receiving the best treatment possible. So I don't see anything in the chat, and I didn't see anyone unmuting themselves. So what we're going to do in the next 15 minutes is just build that foundation of what does recruitment mean, what does retention mean, and how are we going to look at this over the next 4 weeks. So we have what we call like our recruitment ladder. And as you can see on here, there are all of these different areas, and everything really builds on everything else. So the goal is having every step in place as you work through your recruitment planning. Write it down, put it in your comprehensive workforce plan. It's so, so crucial. But because we do have a short time together, I'm going to be pulling out through the different sessions just some of the key areas that you really want to look at when we're talking about mental health or behavioral health providers. And I'm really going to use those two interchangeably, even though I know that they may not necessarily be that, but just to sort of cover the broad spectrum of these type of providers and people who are working on those teams. So as you can see here, we're going to start with community, then moving to teams, priorities, and so forth. Throughout the next sessions, the topic areas that I'm going to be pulling out are: how do you prepare your recruitment team? This is really important because we highly, highly recommend having someone from your behavioral health department as part of that team. They may not be doing everything, may not be a day-to-day activity, but at the very least, for example, reviewing job announcements. Again, that stuff of like, hey, let's flag this language. This may not look good for someone who is, wanting to come to work here and may think, oh, they don't really know some of the clinical language we use or things like that. The other part that I will be really honing in and talking about is the advertising piece. So that'll go into marketing, promotion, and job announcements. I'm going to have a little bit on interviewing. That should really be more standard across the board, but just looking at what are some key questions that make sense when we are in the recruitment process of getting a mental health provider. And then finally, within this ladder, I'm also going to be talking about onboarding. Onboarding is really important because it's that bridge between the recruitment and retention. But how do you onboard a mental health provider so that they have what they need to do their job and then want to stay? And I see that there's something in the chat. Oh, no problem, Tracy. Yes, please feel free. So yeah, our sessions are 75 minutes, but I also understand that can be a little bit challenging for people. So if you need to hop off at any point, please do so. So as we're going through this ladder, I didn't want to not think about some of these other topics. So it's not that they're not important, and it's not that they're not crucial to recruiting and retaining mental health providers or anybody in the mental health team. But the ones that I mentioned, I think really are the ones that we should highlight. But what do we mean with community? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that high level of what we mean by these other ones. So community really starts a lot of your recruitment process. That is where you are looking externally to see what is out there, what do we need, who can we partner with, where can we make connections. So for example, the Psychology Today example that was given, that's a perfect way to look at this. People are looking externally and seeing like, where can we go to find the people that we need? And in rural communities, for example, the recruiting people is really difficult, but there are many people that live in that community that are mission driven, that may want to come to work at a health center that you could really recruit in. They may not be, licensed clinical therapists in some way, but it may be someone that you may be able to develop as you go through the process. So when you're recruiting, don't only look internally, look externally. Look at what local hospitals, how are they recruiting, private practices? Not to say that you're going to be able to meet, for example, the compensation that they are giving, but looking at their practices can teach you a lot about some of the tips and tricks that you may be able to learn. So start with looking externally. Once you begin to look internally, that's where you start building your team. We will talk about that in one of the other sessions. You also need to have your priorities in place. So what are you really looking for? So for example, as I had mentioned, right now, one of the roles that is vacant is we need somebody who is going to provide therapy, short-term cognitive behavioral therapy, not long-term therapy, shorter 45-minute sessions where eventually after a few weeks, we'd be able to discharge the patient. That is important because if that's the type of role that you need to be filled in, you're looking for a very specific type of provider. So writing out these priorities as you work through the recruitment process is critical. And then I see that there's something in the chat. Oh yeah, Nathan, no worries. We will see you next week. So writing out and understanding your priorities is critically important. Now, they could be broader priorities, for example, like what we need to have a certain percentage of our mental health roles filled. So that's larger within the organization, but it could also be something a little bit more specific. Like I said, we need a therapist who works with the LGBT population and specifically provides cognitive behavioral therapy. So write these things down, keep it in your comprehensive workforce plan. Budget. Recruitment costs money. Now, the thing that we do say all the time is it's still going to cost you a lot more to have turnover and lose someone than it is to really invest in the recruitment piece. But you have to have a budget in place, and you have to make sure that there is an investment in your recruiting process. We have recruitment firms in here because some health centers use them, some health centers don't. But really what we say is, if you're using them, keep a rating of how well they're working for you. Keep that in your comprehensive workforce plan, because if you're not really getting anything out of it, they're very expensive to use to not get back what you're putting into it. And then 2 more in the chat. Oh, yes, yes. All of the, and I see Mariah put on there, all the slides and the recording will be shared after the session, and they're also going to be on the discussion board. So as we keep moving up this recruitment ladder, really the rest of the pieces we will be talking about in the next few sessions. The only other one that we won't is contracting. And that also is just dependent on your specific health center. When you bring on a provider, some health centers decide to have a contract in place, some don't. A lot of mental health providers are not comfortable with signing contracts if they are limited to only practicing in the health center. And we will talk more about that when we look at compensation, when we look at things like that. But it's really important, because one of the great things you can do when you're trying to recruit mental health providers is allowing them the flexibility to also practice on their own. That helps supplement a lot of the income that they wouldn't be able to make working at a health center. And it just gives them a lot more freedom that they're looking for. So rather than losing someone fully because they're not able to do that, offering that flexibility can be critically important. So as I said, this is our recruitment ladder. It's just really high level, but I just wanted to fill in those other pieces since we won't go as in depth into them. Oh, and if you do have a contract, have a template, put it in your comprehensive workforce plan. Everything we talk about, I say, have a template, put it in your comprehensive workforce plan. Retention. We're going to be talking about a lot of these different pieces: mission, compensation, benefits, career paths, actually all of them really. They're critically important. Now, obviously, having a really good organizational culture that, for example, your mission is reflected externally with how you work with your patients in your community, but that is also reflected internally with how you're treating your workforce is critically important. Equitable compensation and benefits. And because I know that this is such a huge topic, what I will do is, we did a pay equity white paper recently, and I'll put a link to that in our discussion board. I think it would be a really helpful resource for people to sort of understand that equity piece around it. But when we look at mental health providers, the compensation is crucial, especially when you have newer people coming into the workforce that are coming in with massive student loan debt for positions that historically don't pay as strong as other roles. So we're going to get into that. We're definitely going to talk about it. Work schedules. Oh, thank you, Alex. Went ahead and he put the pay equity white paper link in the chat. Work schedules. One of the comments that we had earlier in the Mentimeter was about remote work. Mental health providers, remote work is something that is very important to them, or some type of hybrid flexible work. And it isn't solely because somebody just wants to only work remotely, but what some of them have found with some of the patients they work with, they've been able to create a better therapeutic relationship having virtual sessions versus being there in person. The person may feel safer talking to them, just, not being one-on-one with someone in the room. But on the flip side, there are a lot of patients that do want to see their provider in person. So how do you talk to your mental health providers about the importance of work schedule? And this is something that is really crucial that you need to work on, should be part of your policies, your procedures, and we will go further into this. Again, today was more of just like, I want to give you the high level overview of what we're going to look at. And then finally, career paths. I mention this a lot in the trainings that I do, where we often think of mental health providers solely as wanting to do clinical work or do therapy, and that's it. I've had a lot of friends that are clinical social workers that have been at health centers for over a decade that recently left because they felt like they had so many great qualities beyond solely providing therapy, but the health center never thought about them, for example, as part of the C-suite or as someone who could go into administration or more on the business side of the work. So we're going to talk about the different career paths and how that can impact the retention of a provider, but also every single thing I mentioned here, these are things you should use to recruit people, writing it in your job announcements, like all of that. Put that message out there. Like, look how great of an organization we are. Look at what we can offer you. Come to work here. So that's why the retention piece is also so critically important. And as we wrap up, I had mentioned, so we're going to have different assignments. The first one, and we will also put this link in the discussion board, we have a self-assessment, and basically this will help you see where you currently stand in your recruitment and retention at your health center. It's not going to be specific to mental health providers, but it's going to give you a really good sense of where everything is. So you can click on this link, we'll put it on the discussion board, we'll also follow up and send it to you. So before the next session, if you can complete the self-assessment, that would be great because it's going to give you a baseline foundation of what are some areas of improvement and some areas of successes that you're already having in your health center. And we will make sure in the next session at the beginning, we'll discuss this further. So that's going to be your first assignment. And those results should be put in your comprehensive workforce plan. So it's one of the key parts of that data collection of like, where do we currently stand? Where do we want to go? Where are our strengths and where are our challenges? As I mentioned, we're going to have a discussion board. So any issues with the discussion board, please go ahead and email Mariah all the PowerPoints, recording, resources, assignments, discussions, everything is going to be on there. So if you have any difficulty gaining access, please let us know as soon as possible so we can make sure to give you access and that you're able to go in, as well as those recordings and PowerPoints and all of that. That's something you can also share with your team if they're not able to be part of the cohort, but you would like to share with them this information. And then I just noticed we only have a minute. So I do want to see if anybody does have any questions in this last minute. Once you get the slides in the discussion board, there's a few of just these extra slides on extra resources, different things that we have coming up that you can register for, our self-paced courses, our newsletter, all of our contacts. So feel free to look through that. This is more for your own information. And then if nobody has any questions, Mariah is going to put the evaluation in the chat. And if, oh, it's going to pop up, never mind. And if all of you could just take a quick moment to fill that out. But of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to come off mute, ask me. I'm happy to stay on, for a few extra minutes if needed. I'm here to help with anything all of you may need. So let me go ahead and stop sharing. And to see, I don't see any questions in the chat. Does anybody have anything that they would like to ask? And it doesn't have, it could be just general on the Learning Collaborative. Nope. All right, then congrats, you finished your first session. So all of you have been great. I'm so excited seeing all of you on camera. So we will see you next week. We are going to be talking about the recruitment team. We're going to get into all of those key areas and really looking forward to working with everyone, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions at all. All right, thank you. Oh, thank you, Sharon. Bye, everyone.
You.
Everyone.
Bye.